I'm so grateful that you all could come and honor Dennis, and I think it's going to be a real celebration. I want to mention that Julie Sadowski, the executive director of the foundation, said something very interesting to me on the phone. She said, oh, I think she emailed me. She said, how appropriate that this is the first community gathering of this size in a year and a half since we had this horrible pandemic. Because wasn't Dennis the master networker and always wanted us to get together, and here we are. So I think it's remarkable. I want to introduce my family because I think everyone's mentioning, who's here, what's here. So if our family members will stand up together. Yeah. Okay, starting with the table there with those people that look like adults are really our grandchildren. It's Neave and Maea and Kaylee and Ava and Robert and Anna and this little Clark, the 6-year-old. Who did I leave out? Ryan. That's because I'm confused because my son's name is Ryan. And Ryan and the 6-year-old Clark is back in California. Sorry, I know. And here we have Frank, Dennis's son Frank, my son Frank, his wife Mary, my daughter-in-law Jenny, and Dennis's sister Rita and her husband Kyle. Am I missing? What about the... Your children. You gotta forgive me, And my son Ryan and my daughter Dana. Dana lives in California, but she's here now. My daughter-in-law Laura, that's helping me orchestrate this whole event. So you'll be seeing her running around. So thank you. I know Dennis for 25 years. We were together as a couple for 16 years, and we were married for 10 years. And interestingly enough, we met through the nonprofit community. And a lot of you here are from the nonprofit community. Dennis was on the Rockland 21C board when it first started with Harriet Cornell, and I joined a little bit after that. So that's where we first went to committee meetings together and other kind of meetings together. But we were just committee members. And then I knew Dennis about 10 years, and I belonged to Elmwood Playhouse, another nonprofit. And Elmwood Playhouse was looking to do a renovation, and we needed money. And like so many of you in this room, I went to Dennis to find out how to get some money. Because Dennis was a great person to go to give advice. He knew so many people. And he said, fine, let's do it over lunch. Now, I had never had lunch with Dennis in all the years. I knew him, but okay, let's have lunch. And something was a little different about that lunch. I don't know. I felt like I was being interviewed. Dennis liked to interview everyone. So I said, well, okay. And then he gave me, at that lunch, he gave me a CD about a week before he had been given an honor by the Rockland Conservatory of Music for his work on the board there. He made a CD. Dennis loved to make mixes and CDs. So he said, maybe you want to hear this. So that weekend I was going out to Long Island, long trip, and I took his CD with me. And I played it once, and then I played it twice, and then coming home I played it 2 more times. And I said, you know what, there's more to this person than I know. I think I want to get to know him better. And kind of the rest was history. So that's how we came together. And we always said that we were a couple that was meant to be at the right time of our journey. And we really believe that we were meant to be together, but not the whole time, that we were at the right place at the right time in our lives. I want to move on to talk about what's on your tables. We left you some goodies. The first being the Constitution. Might be a little odd to see a Constitution with the table, but those of you who knew Dennis probably had him give you a Constitution, because Dennis was like the Johnny Appleseed of the Constitution. He had gotten them from his visits to Washington, and he always kept in touch with his Congresswoman Nita Lowey, and he had gotten a bunch of constitutions, I guess, one year, and he then wanted everyone to have them all the time. And he encouraged everybody to read them. They're all over our house. They're in all his jackets and all his pants and all his drawers. We have constitutions all over, so we definitely wanted you to have a constitution today. The other thing on your table is a couple of copies of the United Nations Conventions of the Rights of the Child. Dennis has that hanging on his wall in his room. We have it on our refrigerator. And even though this was a treaty that was adopted by the UN in 1990, he still promulgated it all over, and it was a thorn in his side that the United States never ratified it. The United States helped write it, and a lot of people approved it, but for political reasons that I won't go into here, but you might want to do your own research, the United States never ratified it. And it really, really pissed him off. So that's there for you to see, and of course he would love you to write your senator. The President of the United States has to present it to the Senate for them to ratify a treaty, and no president has done that for various reasons. So you might want to work on that. The other thing you'll find is an index card. Dennis was famous, for those of you who know him, always had an index card and a pen in his either his jacket pocket or his shirt pocket. One of the regulations he had is if I buy a shirt, it had to have a pocket on top. He didn't own any shirts that didn't have a pocket. And he had a pen to match any color he was wearing. He collected pens. It was one of his things. But I have to tell you, that card and pen came in very handy for me many times. So he wasn't crazy about carrying around an index card and pen. The last but not least thing is that magnet. That magnet has a quote on it that was also on the invitation. Now, Dennis loved quotations. He has a stack of index cards. Every time he saw a quote he liked, he copied it down and kept it. There were scraps of paper in the house with quotations on it. He has a file folder full of quotations. But why did I pick this quotation? Well, Dennis knew Marion Wright Edelman. He knew Peter Edelman, who he had met on his journeys to Washington. And also, Peter Edelman is a lawyer, and he's a professor at Georgetown. He's also a social justice activist, as his wife, Marion Wright Edelman is. Dennis became friendly with them on his trips to Washington. Ms. Edelman was also New York Department of Justice director at one time, so he worked with Dennis. So that quote had special meaning. Not only was it the essence of what Dennis believed in, but it also was from someone he knew and kept in touch with. Peter Edelman wrote a book called Searching for America's Heart. He was an aide to Robert F. Kennedy. He was in the Clinton administration. And he wrote a book called Searching for America's Heart, RFK and the Renewal of Hope. And he autographed that book for Dennis. And in it, he called him a long-distance runner. And that's what Dennis was. He was a long-distance runner. He believed in his principles, he had the conviction, and he just kept to it for years and years. So I thought I would email Peter Edelman and tell him that Dennis passed away. And I did, and I told him that we were using his wife's quote for the magnet. And he wrote me this email back. I am so sad about this news. What a loss. There can't be a person who is more committed to young people. I met Dennis in the 70s, and we kept our friendship for all that time. He would check in regularly, including his trips to Washington, always committed to making life better for young people in Rockland County, but really in the state and the country. He was a very special man. I know this is a difficult time, but you have memories that will be there forever. Marion and I send our deep sympathy, and I will tell Marion that you have quoted that beautiful statement that explains Dennis's work and life. And interestingly enough, I came home last week and the phone was ringing, and it was Marion Wright Edelman. She had seen the invitation, and she thought she was invited. She felt bad that she couldn't come, so she sent her apologies. And I said, not that I wouldn't love you to come, but I didn't really, send it as an invitation. I sent it to show you that we used your quote and have a magnet of it. So she said, oh, isn't that lovely? Well, she said, I'm so sorry about Dennis, etc. So now I'm going to send her a magnet. And now I'm going to send the microphone over to Jean Gauss. Jean is a dear friend of ours. He and his wife Stephanie unfortunately have moved to Pennsylvania, so they're not that close anymore. But Jean is going to move us along in the program. Thank you.
Excuse me one moment. So the first speaker tonight will be...
Yeah, you got to move a little close. You have to tilt it a little more. Yeah.
First speaker tonight will be Simona Chazen. Simona, can you come up?
Yeah. 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 Do you want what?
Simona is involved with the Chazen Scholarship Foundation and volunteer counseling services, and has been for many years.
I'm getting Miss Simona the microphone.
Hold on.
I have known Dennis since 1977, when he was the brand new executive director of the Youth Bureau, and I was the almost new assistant director of volunteer counseling service. Can you tell me if this mic is working okay?
Yes.
VCS, Volunteer Counseling Service, was a young, cutting-edge agency which saw unmet needs and fought to have programs and the funding for them to meet the needs of the unmet need people. It was also very active in fields that at that time were not very popular. Of course, youth was the beginning, and of course that was a popular one. But we were also very active in the fields of domestic violence before there was a word for domestic violence, and in social justice. When I said there was not a word for domestic violence, what I mean is when I began my career, and Dennis began his career, which were almost at the same time, there was no such term as domestic violence. If a man beat up somebody who was not his mate, it was a felony. If a man beat up his wife, that was a family offense for which there was no criminal consequence. So those were those times. We were fighting for social justice, and we were fighting to get what were not such popular causes at that time, especially social justice. And Dennis was fighting to get the funding for the programs of the unmet needs of youth. And he was very good at it. And so we worked together, the two agencies, and we became colleagues. And then we became friends. And then we became good friends. Dennis and I, over all of these years, since 1977, have seen each other through good times and bad, have supported each other, both on a professional and personal level. So this is a very personal loss for me. Dennis was an outstanding director of the Youth Bureau. He cared very much for the kids who came into his program, and he developed innovative programs. Not only that, he cared for and nurtured the youth who came into this agency, and many of them, perhaps because of his mentoring and caring, went on to achieve success. Dennis was also, for 15 years, the director of our family foundation that supported scholarships. And Dennis and I spent untold hours poring over the applications from youth, their essays, their grades, their aspirations. And what were we looking for? We were looking for the kids that we thought would make a difference. The kids who would go on to do something for humanity. Dennis, as many of you know, was also the sole reason that we have a Rockland Community Foundation. Harriet Cornell is sitting across from me, and she knows this as well as I do. He always thought that this community needed a Rockland Community Foundation, and he kept the idea alive for 20 years, never giving up on it. I was always amazed at his persistence. Dennis has had so many achievements, and you will hear about them as we go along in the evening. He gave his energy, his passion to the things he believed in. And so, in closing, I want to say farewell and good night, sweet prince.
Scott Vanderhoef, former county executive of Rockland County, is your next speaker.
Hey, Connie! I'm glad he told me who I was, because I forget all the time. That was very nice, Simona. I've known Dennis. Well, let me start this way.
Wait.
The glint in the eye. It's the glint in the eye. I've known Dennis for over 40 years. We started on the allocations committee of the United Way of Rockland County, dispensing funds for various agencies throughout Rockland. And Dennis and I, although we came from different political persuasions, we came from the exact same moral persuasions. And doesn't that make a difference? Wouldn't it make a difference in the world today if we could find that line? Dennis, the glint in the eye told you immediately that Dennis was two things specifically. He was compassionate and he was sincere. He was compassionate and sincere. And so when I came into county government, remember Dennis was serving as executive director before there was a county executive form of government. When I came in, he and I worked together, and he created programs throughout the county and throughout the state, which made a difference and made youth bureaus throughout the whole New York State different and better. Our guy, Dennis Fleming, did this because of compassion, sincerity, enthusiasm, and that glint in the eye. When he would talk to you, it wasn't the language, it's how he expressed himself by looking at you and expressing enthusiasm. So he came to me and said, I have this great idea. We're going to create a community foundation, a Rockland Community Foundation. I said, well, you get back to me when you figure it all out. And ladies and gentlemen, he did. He pursued it, and he pursued it, and then he wanted me to join, and of course, helping to say no to Dennis and the glint in the eye. Dennis Fleming is a person we will all thank for years to come for his service, for his compassion, for his selflessness, for his moral compass, an example for all of us, especially now. Rest in peace, Dennis.
Marigene Kettler will be the next speaker. Marigene is a vocal coach, a singer, a friend. She's been the executive director of Rockland Conservatory of Music for the past 20 years. The entire time, Dennis has been on the conservatory board. Marigene?
So when we were celebrating our 49th anniversary, Dennis did have this beautiful, infamous CD that wooed the heart of Gail Fleur. And Dennis was involved with the school on so many different levels and was always so important to us. And this is what he wrote inside the CD for that event. On behalf of the many friends at the school, I am pleased to present to you this CD as a memento of tonight's 49th anniversary dinner. Music has always been a significant part of my life from my earliest days of growing up on Staten Island. As someone said some years ago, quote, songs become for everyone a personal soundtrack of our lives. Usually these tunes are connected to happy and/or our most memorable events. This small collection is simply an eclectic sampling of different tunes from different eras in my 56 years, which I was able to fit in the 80 minutes provided. As with most people, the various songs and genres included each fits a mood, a time, or just a whim. I hope you enjoy them. Peace, love, and happiness, Dennis J. Fleming, October 30, 2004. Dennis knows what we all know. Music comforts, it celebrates, it is our companion throughout our lives. So when I looked at these songs, everything from In the Mood to Janis Joplin singing Mercedes-Benz, I realized that there's no genre that sort of says this is Dennis. So I just wanted to just bring a little bit of a musical gift about what music means. And Dennis knew that, again, to comfort, to celebrate. What through the tempest around me roars, I know the truth it liveth. What through the darkness around me flows, songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost calm. I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? How can I keep from singing? From singing? From singing?
Thank you, Marigene. I'm sure everybody would agree that was a beautiful singing. The next speaker will be Harriet Cornell. Harriet is another good friend of Dennis, who's been a Rockland legislator since 1984, serving as the one and only woman chairperson of that body from 2005 to 2013. As founder of the Rockland Collaborative for Children and Youth, Rockland 21C, she and Dennis worked closely since its founding in 1997. He served on its board from then until the present day. Harriet, would you like to come up?
Gail, thank you so much for including me in this wonderful lineup, and welcome to everyone. In preparing my remarks for today, I dug out boxes of my daily diaries from 1984 when I first entered the legislature. Dennis's name was in pretty much every week, often twice. It seemed that every meeting I attended, Dennis, the director of the Rockland County Youth Bureau, was there. Meetings on after-school activities for kids, violence prevention, affordable housing, drugs and alcohol, quality affordable child daycare, mental health. When any of these groups was planning an informational event for the public and seeking the perfect keynote speaker, Dennis would whip out his meticulously organized book of contacts, names from all over the country, and immediately come up with a name and a phone number for the organization. We didn't have computers or cell phones then. We had Dennis. I never had an idea that was worthy of action that Dennis didn't join me, and vice versa. The World Wide Web? What was that? I didn't know, and I'm not sure he did either. But we had to be sure that no one in our community would be left behind for lack of resources and money. So Katie, the Computer and Telecommunications Initiative, was created with wonderful volunteers who really did know about the World Wide Web. Free of charge, they taught new technology to people in Rockland County with hands-on classes, and created web pages for Rockland's not-for-profit organizations. In 1995, I was invited to join the planning committee for the annual conference for mental health professionals run by our Department of Mental Health. The focus that year was youth violence. I recommended Dr. Ed Ziegler, director of the Bush Center at Yale University, one of the founders of Head Start, who had followed its effects on the families of the Head Start children. He accepted the invitation, and I invited Dennis to attend the event. During Dr. Ziegler's talk, he mentioned a program he had developed, which was being utilized in some 200 schools throughout the United States. His description struck us as something that could give a framework to Rockland's many different family and youth programs. Dr. Ziegler invited us to put together a team and come to Yale for a full presentation of schools of the 21st century. We hired a bus, and on a snowy day in December, were joined by a number of people from schools and county government. Everyone was so inspired by what we learned that the team asked me to follow up with meetings once we got back to Rockland. That was 25 years ago. We brought together family, school, and community to ensure that every child could reach his or her optimal potential and Rockland 21C was born. Dennis has been a key board member for all these years, and 21C may also be responsible for Dennis meeting Gail, because the Nyack School District, where Gail worked as the public relations coordinator, became the first in our county to be named by Yale University as a 21st century school. And by the way, New York State education finally caught up to the need for community schools and chose 21C to receive a 5-year contract to train 1/3 of the public schools in the state of New York, from the Canadian border to the tip of Long Island, on how to become community schools. Yes. You might be interested in knowing that the other 2/3 of the school districts were given to Fordham in the city, and to the Binghamton, yeah, State University of New York in Binghamton. So little 21C made its mark. How does one do justice to Dennis in 3 minutes? People don't enter public service to get rich. They enter because they want to serve the public, and that was true of Dennis. But he went above and beyond. He welcomed partnerships and valued friendships. He was generous, never petty, and always seeking the best for children and youth. He was a visionary, and for decades sought to build interest in a community foundation for Rockland, as Simona so clearly indicated, and it finally came to pass. Dennis loved music, as we know, and I treasure that CD he made in 2004 called "Music is the Favorite Passion of My Soul," and it features some of his favorite artists: Frank Sinatra, Glenn Miller, The Temptations, Bob Dylan, The Beatles, The Grateful Dead, and so many more. So Gail, tonight I am presenting you with this certificate. It's a Legislative Distinguished Service Award, and it's from the County of Rockland Legislature, presented to Dennis J. Fleming, February 25th, 1948 to May 12th, 2021, in grateful appreciation for service rendered to the County of Rockland, New York, and to all of us. So friends, I ask everyone to lift a glass or a virtual glass to Dennis with love, a life well lived and never to be forgotten. Thank you so much.
Joe is going to be the next speaker. He was an active member of the Youth Bureau back in high school, as well as a Chazen Scholarship recipient. He's currently the vice chair of the Phyllis Frank Rockland Pride Center, and executive director of the County Democratic Committee professionally. Professionally, he is director of education and digital strategy for the Global Healthy Living Foundation. Joe Coe.
When thinking about Dennis, my mind went to a quote in a book called Midnight's Children by Salman Rushdie. I am the sum total of everything that went before me, of all I have seen and done, of everything done to me. I am everything whose being in the world was affected by mine. I am anything that happens after I'm gone, which would not have happened if I had not come. That was the line. That was the line that made me think of Dennis. I am anything that happens after I'm gone that would not have happened if I had not come. Dennis's work continues in all of us today because of what he did. Dennis, like some of you in this room, met me during what I would say was a messy phase of my life. Phyllis is not messy in the sense of bad, but messy in the sense of I was alive. I was younger, a teen, navigating life in this county as a gay person. I was extremely angry, actually very angry, and if we're being honest, to this day, I'm still pretty angry, and for many different reasons. But I looked for connection and belonging. I needed those connections, and I truly believe that, like many gay and other marginalized young people, those relationships are what keep us going. Dennis was one of the people I met during that search for community. He saw past this self-defined messiness. I met him as I attended the Rockland County Youth Council, a county-wide youth program that brought together young people from across this county. It was a retrieve and provided me many, many opportunities. Dennis saw a spark in me, as he did in all the young people that he worked for and with. Everyone should be like Dennis and find someone's spark and help it shine brighter. As I grew, so did my connection with Dennis. I would see him at Chazen scholarship events and talk to him about giving back, and more generally, just about how life is and was. He was always interested and always made you feel important and valued, something else that we all can learn. I didn't realize until much later in my short life how much of Dennis's work was about investment. Not the kind of investment that you can track by looking at markets and portfolios. The kind of investment that is measured by lives improved, minds expanded, and hearts nurtured. That kind of investment lives on in me and in all of you here today. Let us all honor Dennis by investing in our young people and helping them find and sustain their spark. Thank you.
The next speaker will be Dick Tracy. Yes, Dick Tracy. Dick was Executive Director of the City of Hudson Department of Youth for 32 years and Mayor of Hudson, New York for a term. He was a professional colleague and a vintage friend of Dennis's. Please welcome Dick Tracy.
Well, I just want to give you a little taste of Dennis out of the office, I guess. We know what he's done, I know what he's done, and I'm kind of representing the State Youth Bureau Association too, and another group called the UNS. And I want to thank you for inviting me here today. I'm glad to put some faces on some names that I've always heard so much from Dennis over the years. After 32 years, you know, you come pretty much engraved with each other. But don't be alarmed that Dennis kept this from you. He forged a unique and selective relationship through the Youth Bureau Association with a special group, of course, with myself and many others, that occasionally strayed from the norm. The UNS, which was short for unprofessionals, there was no bylaws, there was no dues, and we took no prisoners. During induction, if you a pledge is performed, and if you're familiar with the epic Animal House movie, you were given the command to I state your name. Well, I must say Dennis must have seen the movie because he passed muster on that one, and there were no repercussions. He did the right thing. Many of us did not include this on our resume, but I'd like to see Dennis as he might have. And it's not quite as bad as if you went home and said, Gail, I just joined the Hells Angels, so I don't think it's quite to that level. I'm not sure Dennis knew what he was getting into at the time, but once there's getting in, there was no getting out. And once retired, you get the distinction of being a retired Un. We had shared many thoughts, many laughs, and we had many moments together to the fullest. I want to thank you, Gail, your family, and Rockland County for sharing him with us. You have to share with me? His passion and love for his family, his community, and his work, and of course the kids will live on in his legacy. He was all of a life well lived. Friends are like stars. You can't always see them, but they're always there. God bless you. Your work is done, my friend. May you rest in peace. Thank you.
We're going to hear next from Mark Judelson. Mark is an environmentalist, an author, and a storyteller. He was the executive director of the Rockland Crystal Run Environmental Education Center and also the director of the Rockland Arts Council. Mark?
I met Dennis in 1985 when I first came to Rockland. He was recommended to me by Harriet Cornell to speak with him, and by Stella Mars. So if Harriet and Stella said the same thing, you know that I was going to do what they said. I met Dennis in relationship to his work at the Youth Bureau, where he guided me in terms of a program that I was running, a job training program. And he was generous, patient, thoughtful, and over the years we became friends. As many of you have described, working with him in the professional and led to a personal relationship. One of the things that I discovered about Dennis was that he loved to walk. And in 1998, which was his 50th birthday, just before that, he lost one of his lungs. So he expressed some concerns about his ability to continue to walk. At his 50th birthday party that some of you attended, I read this poem and Gail asked me to read it for you today. I see Dennis walking. I see Dennis walking on the steep slopes of alpine mountains. I see Dennis walking where the elevation is high, the air is thin. I see Dennis walking with purpose, direction, and joy. Dennis the believer, Dennis the doer, Dennis the cheerleader. Dennis who lets us know, this is my vision. An image of the Kennedys graces his wall. The caption reads, I dare to dream of human beings acting out of reason and compassion. Dennis, the eternal liberal. Who knows, who believes, who trusts in basic human kindness. I see Dennis walking, oxygen streams into his bloodstream, carbon dioxide flows out. I see Dennis walking, directing us to write letters, directing us to write letters again. I see Dennis walking, urging us to call our elected officials, urging us to call our elected officials again. But mostly, I see Dennis walking on the steep slopes of alpine mountains. For 50 years, we have been graced by Dennis. We still need him around to show us how to walk.
Thank you, Maea. Rhea Vogel was a businesswoman and singer, was instrumental in the creation and growth of the Community Foundation. She's a former Community Foundation board member and advisory board member. She's going to speak to us now.
Jean. It's okay.
If we are lucky in this journey that is life, we meet someone along the way who has a pure heart, someone who genuinely cares, and if we are really fortunate, that person also becomes our friend. At this moment, here in this room, we are all united by our fond memories of just such a person, Dennis Fleming. I first met Dennis, 24 years ago at a meeting of the Rockland 21st Century Initiative. I was a parent of young children, and I was looking for ways to be involved in my children's school and community. Somehow, I ended up at his breakout table. Dennis had a talent for spotting people who had energy and were looking to get behind a cause. He was a master recruiter. I think we can all agree. He wasted no time getting me involved in all sorts of activities related to education and youth. A few years later, over lunch, Dennis told me about his plan for creating and developing a community foundation here in Rockland County. I'm surprised we didn't have one here. He asked if I would join the board. He was so enthusiastic and committed to establish this foundation. I knew he would make it happen. How could I refuse? If you had the pleasure of serving on a board with Dennis, you surely experienced his calm, steady, yet persistent determination to get things done. In Judaism, we have a concept. It's called tikkun olam, which means to fix or repair the world and thereby making it a better place. Dennis, more than anyone I have ever known, exemplified that philosophy. Did you know, I guess you do know, because Gail told you, that Dennis made a habit of giving people pocket-sized copies of the United States Constitution. I am sure over time, many of you received one from him over the years. If not, you got one today. This one is mine. He gave it to me years ago. Heeding his direction, I keep it handy on my kitchen counter, and I refer to it often. And I always remember Dennis's commitment to freedom, democracy, civil rights, our Rockland community, and especially to our youth. Today, because of Dennis and his vision, we have a Rockland Community Foundation with over 100 funds valued at $3 million in investments, $350,000 given in grants last year, and 25 scholarships. It continues to grow and flourish. What an amazing legacy. Thank you, Dennis, for being in my life and for doing so much to repair this world. May your memory forever be a blessing.
The next speaker is Pat Byrne, who joined the foundation board in 2008 and was president for 4 years from 2011 to 2014. He now serves as the advisory board chairperson and is someone Dennis relied upon often for advice and support. So Pat is going to speak now.
Dennis Fleming, 1948 to 2021. Much too young, much too young. Winston Churchill said it well. We make a living by what we get. We make a life by what we give. We make a life by what we give. This certainly describes Dennis very, very well. Loving, caring, compassionate, and generous. He lived the same way as a husband, as a father, as a grandfather of 8, philanthropist, humanitarian, and a friend to many, and certainly a mentor to me. While Dennis was involved in many, many nonprofits, such as the youth groups and the music ministries, as we've heard today, and many others, his greatest love, I believe, was the Rockland Community Foundation, which he founded as the president over 15 years ago. It was my great privilege to work closely with him, and up to the very end, have frequent conversations with him. The last month of his life, almost every week, I had an opportunity to chat with him, although I did not realize at the time how close the end was. And as with so many, he became my friend, and he also became my mentor. During the 15 years, Dennis, with many, many others, many of them sitting here today, this foundation has assets of over $3 million, over 100 funds, and in some years gave out over $500,000 to the people in Rockland, either as grants or as gifts or as scholarships, which is just an amazing amount of money to give to people in Rockland County. Dennis received many, many awards during his lifetime. And there's one I would just like to mention in particular, which was by the Rockland Development Corporation as the outstanding volunteer in Rockland. Let me just say that again, as the outstanding volunteer in Rockland. And as a result of him and many others, the RBA gave him its highest award, and the foundation its highest award, the Pinnacle Award, awarding the Rockland Community Foundation the greatest and the best nonprofit in Rockland County. Dennis did so much for so many, but through it all, Dennis never forgot his family, who he deeply loved, as well as his children and his grandchildren. And Gail, you deserve, of course, a special, special place in this. Dennis always loved you. He realized how much you had done to help him and to help all of the organizations that he was working with.
Thank you.
And you were there just for everything, for giving him that encouragement, and most important, that advice which he needed. So we all owe you, Gail, a vote of appreciation. I would like to close with one of my favorite quotes, and it's from Michelangelo. The greatest danger lies not in aiming too high and falling short, but in aiming too low and achieving it.
Mm-hmm.
Dennis aimed as high as you can get, that is, trying to do good for other people. And he didn't fall short. He achieved all of his goals in terms of trying to do that. So he aimed high and achieved it. Dennis was one of those very unique and rare individuals who gave so much to so many. It was a pleasure for me to know Dennis, to become, I believe, his good friend, to learn so much. And I, as many of us here, will all miss him very, very dearly. Thank you, Dennis.
Francis Pratt, a tireless civil rights and social activist, recently retired as NIAC NAACP president after 40 years in that position. A well-known Rockland figure, she served on the foundation advisory board. Dennis was proud to have been honored by the NAACP with a special recognition award in recent years. Francis Pratt will speak.
Be careful.
Good evening. I thank the family for inviting me. I offer my deepest condolence to my dear friend Gail and the Fleming's family. I could say 2 lines about Dennis and take my seat. And they are, he was a bridge builder for our youth. He planted seeds that are bringing forth fruit in Rockland County that are being harvested in the lives of our youth. To paraphrase Abraham Lincoln's word, he said to be an integral part of the community service. One has to be of the people, by the people, and for the people. And that was Dennis Fleming's. So because of that, I would like to read a poem to you by Will Allen Romery. An old man gone a long highway came at evening, cold and gray, to a chasm deep and wide, though whisher flowing a subtle tide. The old man crossed in the twilight dim. The sullen street had no fear for him, but he turned when safe on the other side and said, why build this bridge at evening tide? An old man said, a fellow pilgrim dear, you are wasting your strength with building here. Your journey will end with the end of day. You never again will pass this way. You crossed the chasm deep and wide. Why build this bridge at evening tide? There followed after me today a youth, this is Dennis, whose feet must pass this way. This chasm has been naught to me. To that fair youth may a pitfall be. He must cross in the twilight dim. Good friends, I'm building this bridge for him. And that was Dennis Fleming.
Next, Rita Fleming-Castaldy will be speaking. Rita is Dennis's sister, a highly respected academic and author in the field of occupational therapy. Although she never lived in Rockland for 17 years, she taught occupational therapy at Dominican College and was program director for the weekend therapy program for 10 years. So, say hello to Rita.
Dennis and I and our brother Kevin grew up in a working class neighborhood, aka poor, on Staten Island, where the defined path to a secure middle class life was a blue collar job for men and a pink collar job for girls. City jobs and work for P&G were the most desirable, for they were union jobs, and they afford benefits and security, which typically were not available to low income workers. My parents had a different vision, and they fiercely promoted the need for us to get a college education. Dennis fulfilled that dream. Whenever Dennis and I talked about our work, he would always say, not bad for 2 kids from Port Richmond. And he was right. We had bucked the odds. However, it was not easy, but we each had the good fortune to meet people who saw our potential and supported us along the way. Dennis was recognition that desire and determination are not always sufficient and that many fall through the cracks. Through no fault of their own, provide the seeds for that commitment to help children and families that you all have talked about. He knew it took a village. Dennis' dedication to social justice was also strongly influenced by our brother Kevin. When Dennis was around 14, Kevin was diagnosed with Friedreich's ataxia. Dennis experienced firsthand the effects of inadequate and callous healthcare on our family. It was not pretty. He heard my mother's battles, so Kevin stayed in our parish school rather than be sent to Willowbrook, which if anybody can look up Willowbrook, it's quite infamous, where the experts said Kevin belonged. Kevin was brilliant. When Kevin bucked the odds and moved into his Greenwich Village dorm, Dennis would agree that Kevin was the smartest out of the three of us, to be honest. He did. He typed all his papers with one finger from memory. It was freaking amazing. He graduated from NYU with his bachelor's and master's degree in history and political science. No one was prouder than Dennis. Kevin's 5 years at NYU was the beginning of Dennis's routine to visit Kevin regularly, to Brewer's record stores, or in the village, those street hawkers on the street, looking for hidden treasures. They both loved music, as was talked about, and had impeccable taste. When Kevin passed away, Dennis couldn't bear to dismantle Kevin's collection, so he found space for most of it, and Gail graciously accommodated that. By doing so, Kevin's spirit was preserved along with the wall of albums, or multiple walls of albums. During his weekly visits, Dennis also bought the good ice cream. I remember our chats about the first Ben & Jerry flavors and names. You gotta love Cherry Garcia, and Dennis did. Decades later, when Dennis took my mom shopping each week, he was always dismayed that no matter how hard he tried to convince her that there was a world of incredible ice creams out there, all she wanted was by Breyer's vanilla. And she was daring Breyer's French vanilla. That was it. Kevin's experience at NYU also resulted in Dennis becoming instrumental in the obtainment of a court decision that expanded disability rights. You guys may not know about that one. Kevin was told he could not get his master's degree until he paid the balance on his dorm bill. And we learned that NYU had charged them double. So they had to convert a double room into a single room to allow for wheelchair access, because fire rules in New York City, which you have to be able to turn around in one movement. And they had to get rid of the bed. Kevin refused to pay. It's a violation of 504 Rehab Act. NYU did not care. Dennis got a lawyer. NYU stalled its, yes. Thank you, Paula. NYU stalled and stalled, and basically waiting for Kevin to die. If you've seen the Philadelphia story, it was kind of that way. Dennis' portfolio of notes grew. Gail has the box. We finally called in the newspaper.
It's a storage.
Kevin's full-page story with a big picture was in the Staten Island Sunday Advance, and then we threatened the New York Times and ABC were next. So NYU said, okay, pay 1 penny and drop the case. Kevin refused. Dennis's portfolio got bigger. Eventually, Kevin paid the penny because he was dying. And it was like, please pay the penny so you have your degree, because my mom really wanted to have his master's. So he paid the penny to get the degree for mom. But he refused to drop the suit. NYU agreed, because they were thinking that likely Kevin would pass away, and it would fall by the wayside, the suit. Well, they miscalculated. They did not know that Dennis had been working with a disability rights lawyer who was as tenacious as Dennis was. After Kevin died, Kip Watson continued his pro bono work, and the case versus Fleming versus NYU was won by Kevin, and is now considered a landmark case of disability rights law. We actually didn't know that until I was actually when I was program director of Dominican College, and Avery had passed in 1989. Right in 1990, and Kevin passed away in 89, so we missed it. But the Rehab Act kind of covered this. And I was at a thing for people about accommodations for people with disabilities, and the presenter said, oh, and in this landmark case of Fleming versus NYU. And I was like, and I went up and was like, that was my brother. And so then it's like, because we all were, but without Dennis' partnership with Kip, that never would have happened. Dennis' greatest joy was his granddaughters, Neave, Ryan, Caleb, Maea, Ava. I want to make sure I said it. Neave, Ryan, Caleb, Ava. Yes. You were the miracles of Rose post-cancer life, and I know also he loved you guys, Gail's children. While he loved his son, was very proud of them. He adored you five, I'm gonna talk about granddaughters because here I know you best, and no offense, Frank. But I could always just feel that smile when I talked to him on the phone when he talked about you guys. And Gail, now this is I gotta read this. I didn't expect that beginning part to be so hard. I really didn't. This is probably really hard. Gail, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to reflect on my life with Dennis. And our journey was not always easy, clearly, but over the past few years, we became closer than we ever been. Gail, you gave my brother the happiest years of his life. When Dennis was terrified that he would lose you, he learned how precious each moment is, and his deflection and his intensity was replaced by reflection and patience. I will always treasure the easy conversation we finally able to have, and be forever grateful that we had this gift before Dennis passed. Thank you, Gail, for making this happen.
Go ahead. Oh. Thank you. I don't know how I'm gonna ever do this.
Dana Claire, Dennis's stepdaughter, her mother's, Dennis's stepdaughter, Dana Claire, mother's chagrin, lives in California, where she is the head of software engineering at Dollar Shave Club. So she is a Rockland at heart. The next speaker is Dana Claire.
Oh, yeah. See, I'm not effective. So thank you, I can't get it on. It's permanently planted.
I don't know how I'm going to do this after everybody. Before I forget, I just want to say just a couple of things that I think we left out earlier.
Move the mic.
My mom mentioned the index cards on the table, but I
Oh,
don't
your
think
pen.
mentioned what they're for.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you know, but Dennis always carried around index cards
Right,
in his pocket. If you need, they give you index cards. But if you want to write any remembrances you have of Dennis, we'd love to
forgot that.
collect them at the end. If you haven't already written.
Tell them about the
grocery list
pens,
on it
too.
and all. But and also the pens on the table are actually from Dennis's personal collection. This is the tip of the iceberg. We had no problem finding pens to bring here today. Pens, index cards. There was one more thing, I don't remember it, but if I think of it later, I'll mention it. So I just wanted to say a few things about Dennis, the things that really make me smile when I think about him. One thing is he's one of the few people in my family who calls me by my Hebrew name, Danya. Danya, God, he liked saying it. He said he had names. He loved nicknames. We were connected by the music that we really loved. Everybody's spoken about his music, but we shared a bond. We had a bond over classic rock, folk rock, 60s, 70s, and he'd always say I was born at the wrong time. But we both contend that the Allman Brothers is one of the favorite shows that we've ever seen, although 25 years apart. I have a cat. My mom is not terribly fond of animals. They're fine over there. But I think his love of animals actually convinced my mom to like my cat, and she even pet him once. So I really credit Dennis with that. I think a couple of people, Scott Vanderhoef especially, who talked about the twinkle in Dennis's eye. He was very funny, but in a mischievous sort of way. He would tease my mom, really deadpan, and she'd get so frustrated. You wouldn't know if he was joking or not. And he would never let on, but just give me a little sideways glance and just give me a little wink with a twinkle in his eye. We kept chips and salsa in the house for him for whenever he visited. We knew he's coming. Oh, you have to get chips and salsa. Get it. because he'd get peckish. He'd come, he'd go, do you have anything to eat? Do you have any chips? Do you have salsa? Do you have salsa? I can't tell you how many jars of salsa we've thrown out that we've barely used because, yeah. But we always have it there. We still have the salsa in the refrigerator. That's the other thing. I noticed the Yankees banner is behind the board of photos. So there's a Yankees pennant that hangs in his office. And when I call the house during a Yankees game, you didn't no niceties, nothing. It was, okay, the score is, he'd give me the whole rundown of the game up to that point, let me know everything that was going on. And then he'd hand the phone over to my mom. Something that I love about him, he keeps atlases. He loves geography. I love geography. And driving around Los Angeles, an area that he didn't know so well, he always wanted to know where we were when we were driving. Just what is this neighborhood? Do you know who lives here? What's the population? When was it founded? He wanted to know everything about it. I don't know. We're on a highway. But several hours later, he'd come back and he had looked it up. He had memorized it, whatever on Wikipedia, tell us everything about it. So now my husband and I always joke around. Whenever we see like a new place, like we're driving and there's a sign and it has like a funny name or something like that, and we say it, my husband will go, "Oh, that's an unincorporated hamlet." That's our homage to Dennis. Obviously, from everything that everyone said and why we're all here, Dennis was always so generous. When I moved out to LA, I drove across the country, and he knew I was camping for several days. So he gave me a lot of gear. I probably slept in one of your sleeping bags, right? I had sleeping bags, and anything that he didn't have, he actually took me to Camp Warren, went down to the camping store, and he bought me everything that I needed. And he was so excited, he was living vicariously through me to do this big trip. I mean, we camped for like 9 days straight, and so he was just thrilled. I still have his camping utensils. They hooked together and put in a little vinyl pouch, and I kept them in my office drawer, so I have utensils I need. And on generosity, the other, I'm holding, this is a dollar coin that
Laura,
my sister-in-law, made for all the children in the family, I guess, and one of the children. He handed out dollar coins to all the grandchildren. And he could start his own treasury department with a number of coins. He sent, when my son was about to lose his first tooth, he was really concerned. What are you going to give him? And I was like, nothing, I don't know. But he sent me a whole baggie of dollar coins. So I'd have them available to give to my son. And so we call him the Dennis Tooth Fairy. And just the last memory I have, or what I think about, Dennis was my son's favorite grandparent, hands down, from the get-go. Ever since he was like, he could barely, we'd FaceTime, and if my mom would answer, he wouldn't even say hello to her, just go, "Where's Grandpa Dennis? Put on Grandpa Dennis. I want to see Grandpa Dennis." He just loved Dennis so much. It's all those little things that really keep him alive and so present. Dennis wasn't just my mother's husband, my stepfather, but he was my person too. And my husband's and my son's. We all loved him very much. So I'll hand it over to my mom to speak.
Well, that's not easy to follow her. It's obvious that overwhelmed by the affection and respect that everyone has shown. I mean, I knew Dennis was respected and he did so much and all that, but the outpouring that I've received has really gotten me thinking about him. What was it about him? A lot of people in this room do fabulous things. What was it that made him connect? And Dennis didn't philosophize. He didn't overthink anything. He was very existential. He was right in the moment. He had these deep convictions, these deep principles, and he just wanted to do. He was like a doer. He didn't look back. He always looked ahead. And I think what Dennis made us feel was very safe. There was something concrete about him, that you knew that his principles weren't going to waver, his loyalty to people and his ideals. And one of my friends here who really didn't know him that well said, whenever I was with him, I always felt comfortable. And he was just so grounded that I think he made everyone feel comfortable. And no one minded his Irish charm or that twinkle in his eye that everybody talks about. That's even in the picture. So, listen, Dennis' cardiologist came into the hospital toward the end when he was being supported a lot with medication, etc. And she spoke to him a little, and she called us out in the hall. And she said, I don't know, it's amazing. He has this strong life force. She says, I do this all the time, but how he's dealing with everything here is incredible. A life force. Those two words, I'll never forget that. And, you know, we all know the expression of let the force be with you. I think he had that force, and I think, you know, how lucky you all are in this room that he shared that force with us, and aren't I the luckiest one of all? His authenticity was also at home. He believed in things, and he kind of did what he believed in. I just want to mention a couple of things. Dennis loved to learn. You noticed that from everything. He loved information. He was a news junkie. He loved people, places, things. He subscribed to way too many magazines. He listened to NPR all day long, and he has a radio in every room, so he wouldn't miss the continuity of the story when he moved from room to room. That could be crazy for me, but I got used to it. And if it wasn't NPR, it was CNN, MSNBC, BBC, or the Euronews. It was something going on. My daughter mentioned his atlas. He always had this little DK atlas with him. If he heard about an area, he had to look it up. He would tell me the population. He would show me on a map, I'm not good at geography, just where it is, what it is. He just wanted to know. Wikipedia was his favorite. A techie he wasn't, but Wikipedia he liked. He was let's look it up, let's look it up, let's look it up. He has an archive of pamphlets, journals, maps, stories from years ago about the community school movement. I'd like to contribute it to someone. He has the whole history of the community school movement. He collects buttons, he collects matchboxes, he collects New Yorker cartoons, he collects. He likes his stuff, and he's very nostalgic. It's all part of the same thing, that we hear about what he did in the community. That's the way he was at home. And as far as philanthropy, I looked up the word philanthropy. It's interesting. I always called him a wannabe philanthropist, someone who doesn't have much money and gives way too much away to too many causes. But a philanthropist is an effort to increase the well-being of mankind. It doesn't have anything to do really with money. It has something to do, so not only did he give money to all kinds of charities, we get mail from every group in the world, but he gave his time, his advice, his principles, his caring. So he was a real philanthropist. He carried a wad of dollars in his pocket all the time because he had to give to every homeless person, every musician in the street. He'd cross the street if he saw one across the street. He'd go backwards if he missed someone. It's just the way he was. The gold dollars, you heard about all the time. And he loved to play the lottery. Loved the lottery because he has a list already set when he was going to hit the big jackpot. He has a list of organizations, people, blah, 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 and of course, another house, a few more trips, because he loved to travel, and we had some wonderful trips. So he was true to himself at home and in everything he did in the nonprofit world. So I want to end by going back to my passion, which is the theater. Now listen, Dennis made me a news junkie, but I made him a theater goer. So we split that responsibility. Years back, a little before I started to go out with Dennis, you know, I'm on the Elmwood Playhouse board now, and I was on the board when I started to go out with Dennis. But I produce plays. I'm a behind-the-scenes person. I produce plays, and my buddy Stella Blassenheim, some of you might know, she was the director of plays that I was a producer for. And I have great comfort knowing that Dennis and Stella are enjoying a scotch up in the great beyond and sharing their politics and their crazy stories together. I can picture it. But Stella was an English teacher, and she loved the American classic play Our Town. And she directed it, I produced it, and she even gave me a bit part, which is a big thing for an actress wannabe, to have a big part in a play. And in the third act of that play, you may remember, it takes place in the cemetery. And unfortunately, I was one of the deceased people in the cemetery. But there's a passage that the stage manager and narrator of that show has that I want to share with you today that I dedicate to Dennis. And I find it a great comfort to me, and I think you will too. We all know that something is eternal, and it ain't houses, and it ain't even the stars. Everybody knows in their bones that something is eternal, and that something has to do with human beings. There's something way down deep that's eternal about every human being, and that's from our town. And now I have the extreme pleasure to introduce two of our granddaughters, Neave and Maea Fleming from Denver, Colorado. Neave is 20 and attends Whitman College in Walla Walla, Washington. And Maea is 16 and will be a junior in the Waldorf School in Denver come this fall. Then, after they're finished, Frank will raise a glass to his father.
As many of you heard, I call Dennis our grandpa Daw, and so does Neave. But Daw spoke to many of us, I know us in particular, in the love language of music. And throughout our whole lives, he's taught us its importance and instilled with us a great passion and love for music, and taught us more than we can fit in our heads about it. But we thought today we would honor and thank him through song, a song that he loved so much, and I know many of us do here today. And feel free to sing along. He would have. And I know he would love to hear all of this. So.
Yeah, and I want to add, the song that we're going to be singing is Ripple by the Grateful Dead.
He's a deadhead.
Which he was, and this is one of his favorites. And I encourage all of you to, I'm sure you've heard the song, but if you haven't, or even if you have, look up the words later. We all know that Dog was a big fan of information and looking things up and sharing his depths of knowledge and constantly. So, educate yourself. That was definitely something he taught us. So look up these lyrics if you have the time. And to us, it is so indicative of the person he is. There's a few lines specifically that speak to us. Reach out your hand if your cup be empty. If your cup is full, may it be again. Which is so indicative of his generous spirit that everyone has talked about tonight. And it's just a joy and an honor to be his grandchildren, which I'm sure everyone at this table over here understands. Dog, we love you so much. If the words take glow with the gold of sunshine, and my tunes were played on the harp unstrung, would you hear my voice come through the music? Would you hold it near as if were your own? It's a hand-me-down. The thoughts are broken. Perhaps they're better left unsung. I don't know. Don't really care. Let there be songs to fill the air. Ripple in still water when there is no pebble toss, no wind to blow. Reach out your hand. If your cup be empty, if your cup is full, may it be again, let it be known. There is a fountain that was not made by the hands of men. There is a road, no simple highway between the dawn and the dark of night. And if you go, no one may follow. That path is long, your steps alone. Ripple in still water when there is no pebble to go if you should choose to leave us follow. But if you fall alone. If you should stand, then who's to guide you? If I knew the way, I would take you home. La da da da, la da 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 da, la da 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 da. La da 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 da, da 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 da, da da.
And thank you to Dana,
who I didn't even know played the guitar.
So we wanted to thank Frank.
Hey everybody, boy, you talk about following that. Oh God.
Don't sing.
No, I won't sing. Yeah, okay. Thanks, girls. I'm just doing the toast, so oops, I've got my toast.
He has to get his paper.
And anybody who knows me knows Dad would appreciate me toasting him with a book.
Absolutely.
Coming from me. Thank you, Dad. After all great things that were said today here, there's not much more that I could really say about Dad. I'll just talk about a few personal family things. It won't be too long. As a lot of you said today, Dad was a great guy. I'm going to step it up in the Bill and Ted kind of a way. He wasn't just a great guy, he was an awesome person. He was an awesome son. Growing up, every single weekend, he would have to go to went to Staten Island, either Saturday or Sunday, one day to one grandparents, the next day to another grandparents. Would always have lunch or dinner, something like that, every single weekend. Then after Grandpa passed, he continued that. I mean, we got older, and he continued that. He went and saw Grandma every weekend, whether it was in Warwick, in Tuxedo, or at her final home that she was in. Every weekend, he never missed a weekend with Grandma. He was an awesome brother. And Rita talked about Uncle Kevin in college. Again, every weekend, if that Saturday we went to see Grandma and Grandpa, that Sunday we went to see Kevin at NYU. And we loved going there. It was a big day out for us. And then later on in life, he had a fantastic relationship with his sister. He was an awesome dad. Growing up, we didn't have much, okay? But every single year, we managed to go on vacation, whether it be up to Beaver Kill, camping, even if it's to Washington, D.C. Camping was always involved every place that we went, which is okay. We loved it. We loved camping. I don't camping too much anymore because maybe we went too much. I don't know. And then when we weren't going camping, every Friday and Saturday night, we would play family games. We'd play Monopoly, we'd play Risk, we'd play Clue, didn't matter what it was. And of course, we played poker. Dad taught me how to be a poker player. And I still play to this day with a couple of my friends over there every Tuesday night. And he's an awesome husband. He was an awesome husband. Gail, he helped to transform him into an even better human being than I thought he could. He took care of her when she needed, and she did the same for him. Sorry, so this one's gonna be fun. Finally, he was an awesome grandpa. He loved his grandkids more than anyone I ever saw. Not one holiday would go by where he didn't send them a card. At Easter, I mean Arbor Day, I'm joking, but just I remember Kaylee was opening up a card for St. Patrick's Day. One of her friends was like, "You get a card for St. Patrick's Day?" She was like, "We get a card for every holiday." And it was really, really nice thing. And honestly, and not a bad thing, happy thing, the last card Ava happened to get for her confirmation a couple weeks ago, which, good for you, honey. I don't mean that in a bad way. So with all that said, I'd like to give a toast to the most awesome man I've ever known, my dad. Love you, Dad. Thank you very much.
What can I say? I want to thank Jean for taking on the task of connecting us all. Jean is a great friend, definitely a great friend. I want to recognize all my friends in the room who've always supported me, and Dennis. Thank you, guys. And I think this will help me heal what I heard tonight. So I want to thank you all for being here. I forgot a piece that I want to say. If anybody here would like to say anything else, that a memory they have or anything they want to say, please just stand up and do it now. And if you want the mic.
Kevin for sure one.
Kevin? Oh, I'm worried.
Thank you for reminding me. Okay. I met Dennis when I first met Frank, 20 years ago. And we weren't tied to anything that he was doing with the schools and it's philanthropy and everything else. The guy was genius. But for me, my father wasn't around, and I looked at Rob's father, and he was fantastic, and then I looked at Dennis and everybody that I could speak to, and he just absorbed that, and he made a special thing for my wife and I, Linda, who happens to be here, and he made CDs for us too. 20 years, and we would sit there, we would throw horseshoes, and we would have phenomenal times. And I said, I like Fields of Gold by Neave Cassidy, and he said next thing I know, I had 4 CDs of Cassidy. You know, it was instant, you know. He was a really special person, you know, made me feel better, made her feel included, made everybody just, you know, feel fantastic. And that's who Dennis was. And I don't know, like, I was an outsider, and he just brought me in. And that's really, you know, that's really all there is to it. Really, thank you. Thank you.
So I just wanted to say thank you to the speakers and ask if anybody wanted to share.
I'm back with you. Oh.
I guess because I was quite emotional in what I said, and forgot some of the things I wanted to say. So I want to just say one thing about Dennis that was apparent to those who knew him. He was very politically savvy. He was always my go-to guy if I wanted to understand the politics in the county, the politics in the state, and even the politics in the country. Dennis, we all have these file cards here, because Dennis carried always in his breast pocket a file card to write down the information that he might get from you that evening. And I always thought of those file cards as his Rolodex. Mm-hmm. Dennis had a fabulous Rolodex. On this Rolodex was every legislator who ever had anything to do with Rockland County. Those in the state, in Albany, those in Washington. And Dennis, and he had developed personal relationships with all of these people, and maybe even more importantly, their assistants. So that when Dennis had a cause for youth that he really, really believed in, he could call these senators, these legislators, and they would take his calls. And because of this, he brought into this county untold thousands of youth dollars, untold thousands of dollars that supported programs for youth. And on a personal level, and I must say this, I feel he never got the recognition for all the money he brought into this county. On another level, I would like to say that Dennis and I were friends for so many years. We shared so much about our lives, our families, and we shared joys and sadness. But one of the things that I remember that Dennis told me that I hope the Fleming family will always cherish is something he said about his mother. He said, my mother said to us always, read, 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 read. Get knowledge, read. And that is a great legacy. And I want to say, again, what I said before, because he was truly a superior humanist. And I have to say this out of my grief and the grief of this whole community here, that all I can say again is what I said before. Good night. Good night to my dear friend. Good night, sweet prince.